Wednesday, March 9th, 2022. What a day it is to have a day. And there's no better way to conclude your day than with a little sports chatter. Hi, everyone. I'm Will Talent, joined by Annabelle Watson and Bridge Gotham, and welcome to One-on-One Nightly, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. We have much to discuss over the next hour and a half, starting with some March Madness, followed by Knicks and Nets talk and where the two teams stand as the playoffs creep nearer, along with some general NBA notes to keep an eye on as they put a cap on the regular season. We'll then cycle over to the NFL, covering the massive headlines involving Russell Wilson to Denver, Aaron Rodgers' commitment to the Packers, Carson Wentz's third home in the last 3 seasons, and Calvin Ridley's suspension for the entire upcoming 2022 season. We'll close tonight's show out with a discussion about the MLB and where the league and union currently stand as CBA talks continue to advance. But first, Annabelle and Bridge, how are you guys feeling on this Wednesday night?
I'm feeling pretty good. I wish the weather was a little bit nicer.
Oh, don't we all?
The snow is kind of messing up my vibe, but I'm excited to be here with you guys tonight, excited to talk some sports.
I like that sentiment. I mean, 3 days ago, 70 degrees and shit. Now we got breaking out the boots again. But hey, I'm always happy to talk some sports.
Absolutely. Got to do what you got to do. So all good vibes here at our Rose Hill studio. But now it's time to get down to business, starting over in the world of NCAA men's basketball. And we're going to kick this segment off with our very own Fordham Rams. Now, the Rams, they got a first-round bye in the A-10 tournament, and they'll face George Mason tomorrow in Washington, D.C. High noon is the scheduled tip-off time for that one. The Rams, they crushed expectations this season, going 15-15 under first-year head coach Kyle Neptune, and they ranked a very impressive 61st out of 358 teams in defensive rating. Fordham won their last meeting against George Mason 50-47 just a few short weeks ago. But now I'll start with you, Annabelle. So what are your expectations for the Rams in tomorrow's game and for the rest of the A-10 tournament?
So I think the big key here and what I'm expecting is for Chuba Ohams to have a great game. Career high 23 points against George Mason on Saturday. So I'm hoping he can take that momentum into tomorrow. I do have pretty high I'm optimistic about Fordham, but the team that really is the team to beat and could be a problem is Davidson. Great regular season. They're just the best team in the A-10. There's really no way around it. But, you never know. Fordham, I think, as I said, the key is Chuba. If Chuba goes off and they can work together, get behind him, they could make a big run. But I think obviously, as I said, there are some weapons in the A-10 like Davidson.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a Fordham Rams fan, you're probably surprised that Fordham is not on TV tonight. They've consistently been in the first round for so long, and to have a bye is just such a sense of improvement.
Huge step up.
Fordham and George Mason, some history this year. They have played once. The Rams hosted. They won 50-47 on February 20th. So this is definitely a winnable game for the Rams, and back to Annabelle's point, Chuba Ohams, most improved player in the A-10, all-conference second team, all-defensive team. I mean, this guy's a stud. So if the Rams are going to win, the offense is going to flow through him. He was, he ranked nationally 5th in rebounds, 11.5 per game, and that's nationally, everything. So, I mean, pretty good player.
Absolutely. Chuba doing the dirty work. Double-doubles left and right for him. Very exciting season for him. Yep. Now, the winner of this game, they will face the top-seeded team, Davidson Wildcats, on Friday. And Davidson, they went 25-5 and 15-3 in A-10 conference play. Very impressive records there. They're also 14th in the country in field goal percentage and 8th in the country in three-point percentage. So they like to shoot the rock. They like to find that nylon. They like that swish. And Fordham lost both matchups to Davidson this past season. One game a little closer than the other, but still an L is an L. So best of luck to our Fordham Rams. Hopefully they will make a run in the tournament. But now we're gonna segue over to some conferences that we all like to hear about when it is this time of the year. And we're gonna start with the Big Ten. So the Big Ten, they have 4 teams in the AP top 25, including Purdue, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Iowa. And they have a handful of sleeper teams to look out for, including Rutgers, Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. They're all great teams, and it's hard to pick one champion. But I'm going to start it off right now. My pick coming out of the Big Ten is Purdue. Now, they had 2 tough losses down the stretch to Michigan State and Wisconsin. However, their offense is just way too good. It's an absolute prowess. They're 3rd in field goal percentage and in 3-point percentage. They're 10th in assists, and they're 2nd in offensive rating in the country. That speaks volumes. That is an incredible offense. You're going to have a pretty strong defense to shut them down. But they are a little lacking in defense, but nevertheless a very good scoring team, as I said. So, Bridge, what do you think, or who do you think has the best shot of coming out of the Big Ten?
Wisconsin. Wisconsin is the team to beat, provided that they have Johnny Davis. He did get hurt. Now, you're probably wondering, they're just coming off a loss to Nebraska, arguably the worst team in the Big Ten. But here's the deal. The Big Ten is a league that is so even from top to bottom. It can go either way. And when you look at the standings, when you look at the metrics and the statistics, winning at home is so big in college basketball, right? The home court advantage is unlike anything else. The NBA doesn't come close even in Game 7 of the finals. I think anyone can agree on that.
Definitely.
But the way that it works here in the Big Ten is that you got to win on the road. And Wisconsin is the team with a 9-2 road record, which is the best in the conference. Your Purdue Boilermakers 5-5. Not bad, which is still better than most. But by a long shot, Wisconsin has the best record on the road. And I like to think of road games and neutral games as similar because if you don't have your home crowd, you're going to be in the same mindset, right? So the rest of the way is obviously going to be neutral sites. I think Wisconsin has a really complete team. They can win anywhere, and that's why they're my pick to go all the way.
I have Wisconsin as well. Like you said, Johnny Davis, I think he's like the perfect college basketball player. And, as you said, it's dependent on him being healthy, but they also have younger pieces like Chucky Hepburn, great name. So I think they have people they can rely on if Johnny Davis is down. They tied with Illinois for the regular season title, so roll Badgers.
Roll Badgers. Now I hope one of us, I hope we're right on that. Both of you guys with Wisconsin. I do like that pick. As I said before, it's a tough conference to really pick one winner. There's a lot of good teams.
It could be any of them.
It really could. But now we're going to talk about the Big East a little bit. Another conference with a lot of good teams like Providence, Villanova, UConn, Creighton, and Marquette, just to name a few. And they're all teams that can and have done damage in the madness. The Big East always has a very exciting team that always makes a lot of noise and makes it very enjoyable to watch. But out of the Big East, you're going to like this one, Annabelle, being a Connecticut girl, I am going with the UConn Huskies.
Oh, yeah.
And they play very well on both sides of the ball. 39th in offensive rating, 55th in defensive rating. They're also 9th in rebounds with 37.4 per game, and they're 3rd in offensive rebounds with 12.2 per game. So good stuff there. They really crash the boards, and they look to transition on offense. So with a lot of good basketball teams in the Big East, Annabelle, who do you have taking home the Big East crown?
Well, I don't think it's a big surprise here. I have my UConn Huskies.
Let's go.
RJ Cole and Adama Sanogo, they're both weapons on both sides of the ball, too. I think that is key. They're not just surging on offense. Their defense is fantastic. And my biggest point with UConn is they are so well coached by Dan Hurley if he doesn't get too angry and get thrown out of the game. So I think that's key. They get fired up. They're a fun team. And also Madison Square Garden is practically a home court for UConn. So I'm rolling with my Huskies.
For me, I wish I could complete the three-peat, but I have to go with the Villanova Wildcats. I think that name alone carries a lot of weight. Our own coach, Cal Neptune, here at Fordham came from their program. They are a historic program with a lot of experience, and I think their team is a little bit more complete. I know Providence is the regular season champ for the Big East, but you did see Villanova. They beat them at the end of the season. I just think that they are just a deeper and I just see them making more of a run, but I honestly could see UConn winning it either way. I think it's really a toss-up between those top three teams, Providence, Villanova, and UConn.
It really is. I had a tough time picking my winner there. I actually did go with Villanova for prep here, but I then deleted and was like, we're going with UConn. I just thought UConn's numbers were a little better. So now we're going to talk about the Big 12, another conference that has 4 top 25 teams, including Baylor, Kansas, Texas Tech, and Texas. And I think it'll come down to either Kansas and or Baylor, but I'm going with Baylor here. Now, Baylor, another team that excels on both sides of the ball, 24th in offensive rating, 19th in defensive rating, 47th in field goal percentage at 46.8 per game. The weakness, though, and this could really hurt them not only in this tournament but in the Madness, is they are a 184th in turnovers, averaging 12 per game. Definitely a weakness. I see them coming out of the Big 12, but that's a little alarming. Now, the Big 12, they always have some great basketball programs, as I just mentioned. But, Bridge, who's taking the title this year?
Baylor, defending national champs. I think
Enough said.
Look, college, it's not always the same, right? You're not going to bring back the same group of guys every year. But what you are going to bring back is the same coach and the same program and the same winning culture. I think it's just hard to pick against them. I know Kansas is having a really good year. Texas Tech as well. There's a lot of good teams. I think there's maybe 5 or 6 that are projected to be top 6 seeds. That might be wrong, but I think it's something like that. Even a team like TCU that could be real dangerous. They're looking to be about an 8 seed according to bracketology on ESPN, Joe Lenardi. But I think Baylor will win the conference tournament. I think they'll win it easily.
I'm going against you guys. We can't have a three-peat tonight, I guess, but I have Texas Tech. They beat Baylor in both of their regular season games, and I know the slate is kind of wiped clean in the tournaments, but that shows me something. They're an amazing defensive team. They're well coached. They lost to Oklahoma State on Saturday, but it honestly doesn't worry me too much. Texas Tech, I think they have something to prove after the whole Texas, the coaching thing, but I think that their defense is what's going to get them far, and the regular season wins against Baylor, like I said, it shows me something. I think they can get far in this tournament.
Definitely. Defense carries a lot of weight. Texas Tech, always a very good program for basketball. But like you said, Annabelle, we have not been able to perfect the three-peat, but we have one more conference, and hopefully we'll get it done here. And that is the SEC. It's another conference with 4 teams in the top 25. Auburn, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Arkansas. A lot of fun teams to watch, a lot of teams that are making noise. And I'm just going to go straight up right now. I'm going Auburn. Auburn, they were on top for a while, and they slipped and they fell towards the latter half of the season. They fell to Gonzaga as the nation's number 1 team. But they have won their last 3 of 4, and they are currently the 4th best team in the nation, and they're a very good defensive team. They rank 21st in defensive rating. My pick is Auburn. Now, with a stacked and a very competitive SEC, Annabelle, who do you have coming out on top?
So I have Kentucky because of one man, Oscar Tshiebwe, who, in my opinion, is the National Player of the Year right now. I think he's one of the most dominant front court players in college basketball, if not the most. 25 double-doubles this season. I think it's just insane. I think he can almost carry the team on his own. So I think with him, they're going to get very far and take the W in this tournament.
So we already know we're not going three-peat, but
Definitely not happening now.
I'm going to go with Auburn. I agree with Will.
Oh, my gosh.
Wow.
I'm always the dissenter.
Wow.
No, I mean, you look at the statistics there. They're undefeated at home. When you've only lost 4 times, you just, are they going to lose a 5th time? I mean, seriously, they've had one heck of a season. I know they've struggled a little bit, relatively speaking, down the stretch, but they have won, 2 of their last 3? 3 or 4. 3 or 4. And if you have any momentum going into the tournament, that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that I agree. Look, Tshiebwe is so good. So I mean, he's a stud. But I think Auburn-Kentucky final in the SEC is pretty likely.
I can definitely see that happening. Lots of big conferences, lots of big teams. Should be a very, very fun March, as it always is. But now we're going to talk a little bit about our sleeper teams. Now we have 2 each here. I'll start with my first one. And that's going to be Murray State, the home of Memphis Grizzlies point guard Ja Morant. 30-2 record. That's very impressive. I understand their schedule. They don't play big teams like these other programs do, but still 30-2. That's very, very impressive. Now they are 6th in offensive rating. They're 12th in defensive rating, 22nd in field goal percentage. They're also 20th in rebounds and 22nd in offensive rebounds, and they average 11.4 turnovers a game, which is good for 62nd best in the country. They are also, we were talking about momentum before, Bridge, on a 20-game winning streak.
Wow.
20-game winning streak, and I said before, I understand that they don't play the teams that Auburn and the Kentuckys and anybody in the Big East and the big Power 5 conferences. I understand they don't play teams like that. They did play Auburn, and that was one of their 2 losses. But a 20-game winning streak, I mean, you are riding on some incredible momentum when it comes to March Madness, and momentum is key in this tournament. If you make it in, it's an absolute crapshoot. So any momentum that you have to ride with it. And as I said, they did lose to Auburn. They haven't beat any top 25 teams, but I would not be shocked if they do make it out of 64, possibly out of 32, maybe a Sweet 16 appearance. We'll see. But don't be shocked if they do get out of the first round.
If you guys are watching on YouTube, I had a very big reaction to Will picking Murray State because I also have Murray State. Kind of same thing as Will said. They're in a mid-major conference, but we do need to see that translate to the tournament. But a 20-game win streak, that is insane momentum. And, it might just be because of Ja Morant, but I feel like this team always has some kind of mojo in March, and I think we could see them make a deep run and spoil some brackets.
This might surprise a lot of people. I'm actually going to go with Rutgers here.
Oh, let's go.
Big surprise.
Let's go.
Why don't you listen to me here?
Give them a bid,
Let me name a few teams. Wisconsin, Illinois, Purdue, Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, Indiana. What do they all have in common? They lost to Rutgers. Rutgers has some bad losses. They lost at home to Lafayette. They lost to UMass. They lost to DePaul. But Rutgers has some of the best wins. They've beaten, you literally look at the top half of the Big Ten, they have beaten all of those teams. So they've proven that they can beat those teams. Again, they're here from the tri-state area. They're not far from New York City, about an hour drive. They have a guy in Ron Harper Jr. who's been in the national spotlight for hitting a number of big shots. They have a fifth-year senior in Geo Baker, a point forward in Paul Mulcahy, a top 50 recruit down low, Cliff Amori. And they also have the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year in Caleb McConnell. So you just take that starting 5 right there. They can match up well against anyone.
Really love that pick, Bridge. Rutgers, or as my old baseball coach used to call them, Rutgers. It's a New Jersey native. I'd love to see them get a bid. But for my second team, I'm going with the U. Let's go. Miami Hurricanes, 22-9, 14-6 in the ACC play, 42nd in offensive rating. They're not the best defensive team, but they are 20th in steals at 8.8 a game. They're only averaging 9.6 turnovers, which is good for 8th in the country. Ball security, that holds a lot of value. I can see them making it out of the first round and maybe some noise in the round of 32, but definitely out of the first round. That is a sleeper of mine that I've had on tab for about a month, so hopefully they do make some noise in March.
My second pick is out of the SEC. It's not the team I picked to win, but, you never know what can happen. I have Tennessee. Vescovi and Chandler, they both average 13.6 points per game, so they have a good core out of those two. And I think a big thing is the SEC is so loaded this year, as we were talking about, and Tennessee knows they can compete with those big dogs. They're likely 3 seed, so I think you could see them get pretty far. With the SEC, as I said, being so loaded this year, I think a lot of teams have gotten overlooked, and Tennessee is one of them. And I think they can get pretty far. They have a great offense. So Tennessee, don't overlook them just because their conference was so good this year.
This was a tough decision because I love March Madness. And I love looking at bracketology, and I love listing 10 teams that I would like to see go all the way. But I think if you're anyone in the country and you watch even a little bit of college basketball, you caught the Duke-UNC game on Saturday. You saw North Carolina spoil Coach K's last game. And they are going to be one of my sleeper picks to go all the way. I know North Carolina, given their history and given their reputation, haven't had a stellar season by any means. But I think coming in as a projected 8 seed, they can do a lot. They've proven they can beat Duke on their home court. So I think if you can do that, you can beat anyone.
I 100% agree with that pick, Bridge. UNC, they went to Chapel, they went to Duke, and they put in the work. They really did spoil. They made Coach K apologize to the home fans.
Yep.
That sets the tone going into March. Really like that. So last part of our March Madness segment, we're going to do some early, very, very early national champion picks. And I'm going to start it right away. I am going with Gonzaga, a team that consistently reaches the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8 every year. They've appeared in 2 national championships over the last 5 years, including their loss to Baylor last year. They're 24-3 overall this year, and they currently sit at number 1 in the nation. And this year, I really think they finally climb over the hump and take home their first national title. So I'm very interested in who you guys think will survive the madness. So Annabelle, we'll start with you.
I'm going to go back to my SEC pick and say Kentucky. And again, because of Oscar Tshiebwe, I think you need to have that one guy with college basketball. I think he can really, carry them through the tournament. I think that, with a dominant front court, that is key. And he's just so good. This is kind of my Oscar Tshiebwe love story, but I'm going with Kentucky.
Yeah, I mean, before I say mine, I just want to go back to Gonzaga because they're consistently a number 1 seed every year. Mark Few's been there since 1999, but I don't know if a lot of people know this. They have not won a national championship yet, somehow.
Wow.
0 in program history.
And I always laugh because they are such a good team. They put guys in the league. Jalen Suggs is in the league. He was their player last year, famous for hitting that buzzer beater against UCLA in the Final Four. Amazing shot. But just given their history, it's hard to pick them. I don't feel good. So for me, I'm gonna probably. I picked Wisconsin to win the Big Ten, so I'm gonna pick them to go all the way. I think I mentioned before, Johnny Davis is a really, really good player. He can take over games. Like he can seriously, basically go 1-on-5 against their opponent, and he'll be a stud in the league one day. I'll tell you that. So I pick Wisconsin to be the 2022 national champion.
I love both of your picks there. They do play better competition than the pick that I chose, and I think playing better teams, you guys can attest to this, it holds a lot of value when it comes to March Madness.
100%.
You play better teams, you just play better, and if you can play better against better teams, then you're pretty scary. So, we could talk about the Murray State.
It's hard to judge Murray State, right?
You go, they're 30-2, very impressive, no discredit there whatsoever. But the better the competition you play, the better quality of basketball you're going to have deep in late March, early April.
Even those losses against good teams, good experience.
Yeah. I believe against Auburn, they only lost by like 4 or 5.
Oh, no, they're a good team, don't get me wrong.
Yeah, so even a loss by that small of a margin, that's a big game. That's not a win. It's definitely not a win. But it's a good sign going into the tournament. So that's going to wrap up the March Madness discussion. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll go over the Knicks and Nets situations, all of this, and much more coming here on One-on-One Nightly.
Rise and fire, right arc 3. Quisenberry knocks it down. Half-court heave. Rose gets it to go. Charlton directing traffic to float for Ohans, throws it down.
Fordham men's basketball is headed to D.C. The Rams return to the A-10 tournament in their first season under head coach Kyle Neptune. Join myself, Ryan Gregware, my partner Nick DeLuca, our on-site producer Mike Messina, and the entire WFUV sports crew with tournament coverage for your Fordham Rams. Their exciting season comes to a close, live on 90.7 FM and YouTube.
Welcome back to One on One Nightly. I'm Will Talent, joined by Annabelle Watson and Bridge Gotham. Now, we're going to shift over to the pros. We're going to talk a little Knicks and Nets before we get into the entire NBA. And now we're going to start with the Knicks. So the Knicks, they're wrapping up their Western Conference road trip with a game against the Mavericks tonight and one more against Memphis on Friday. Their last game was a W against the Sacramento Kings and a career-high 46 points for Julius Randle to go along with 10 rebounds, the double-double there. 28, 8, and 6 for the young R.J. Barrett, and 27 off the bench for IQ Emmanuel Quickley. They finally, I can't believe I'm putting this into a sentence right now, the Knicks have a 2-game winning streak. That is just unbelievable. I love that. Haven't seen that in a little bit. But they still, on the real talk, they still are struggling with inconsistencies all around the court. Not even just the court, the coaching staff, the front office, whatever it is. It's just a mess. So I'll pass it over to you now, Bridge. And with the play-in tournament looking more and more out of reach, what glimmer of hope, if any, can Knicks fans look for in terms of next season?
Well, I think you know you're a Knicks fan when you're celebrating winning 2 games in a row, and not just that, calling it a win streak. We won back-to-back games.
Back-to-back games.
Yes, technically a win streak, so you'll take it. For those of you watching or listening, Knicks are currently leading the Mavs 21-12 in the middle of the first quarter. A lot of basketball left. The Knicks sit at 12th in the Eastern Conference, as Will just said. Julius Randle has been the source of controversy this season. Coming off arguably a career year last year, he was the heart and soul of the Knicks. When they got the crowd back for that playoff series against the Hawks, he obviously struggled a little bit, faced some criticism and some backlash. But then the Knicks locked him up. I think it was it 4 years, $56 million?
Something around
72 million,
may
maybe?
have been 5.
They locked him up long-term with some
deal,
big
though.
money.
Yep.
And I hope the numbers are right there. But the Knicks believed in Randle, and he came back this season, and he just wasn't the player he was last season. And I'd say the one, to your point, the one glimmer of hope, the one bright spot this season has been R.J. Barrett. 3rd overall pick a few years back out of Duke. That draft class, of course, with Zion and Ja Morant. Zion has, I know we're going to talk about the NBA more later, but Zion has played well when he played, but he's barely played. Ja Morant has exploded this season. But RJ is finally coming into his own. I think he was averaging close to 30 points in the month of February. And I think if you're a Knicks fan, you have to hope that they continue to build around him. IQ, of course, even Obi Toppin, those younger guys. Tom Thibodeau's rotations haven't exactly been favoring them, but when they are on the court, they're a lot of fun to watch.
I definitely think if the younger core can develop a little bit more, like Barrett, I think he's obviously improving, but he's not quite there yet. If you get that younger core to really be consistent, I think a problem always with younger cores is they're inconsistent. They don't have enough reps in these big games. So I think if they can become more consistent, I think the Knicks will be a lot less frustrating. But I don't know if that's going to happen this year. You got to give them their time. So Knicks fans, you might still be a little bit more frustrated for the rest of the season, unfortunately. But I think Knicks fans should be optimistic with these young guys.
I absolutely agree with you there, Annabelle. Every time that they put Cam Reddish, R.J. Barrett, and Emmanuel Quickley on the floor together, I just have a little more excitement watching the game.
Yeah. Even
though they may not win, but they work as a cohesive unit. They just look like they're having fun playing basketball out there. And I just don't understand what Tom Thibodeau is doing in terms of his rotation strategies. They haven't been working all year long. They're still not working. And as I said, when he puts the younger guys in, it's more fun basketball. And you brought it up, Bridge. Julius Randle has not been he hasn't been bad. He's been fine on the court, but off the court though, in the comments that he has said, it adds to the mediocrity of the New York Knicks.
Yeah.
Now it may be a little much to say, like, how can you say that what he says off the court impacts the Knicks? Well, it does, because when you tell the fans, not just the Knicks fans, but New York fans in general, you tell them to do something with an explicit along the lines of not talking, that's not good. That you're not going to have many fans. And when they boo you, it's because you're not performing. So you have to take that. don't take it to the media and then put it on wide blast so everybody can hear what you said. If you are not playing at the level that you should be, you need to be held accountable for that. And Julius Randle has not done the best of jobs doing that. There's been multiple apologies from him, and that's just not good, especially after he just got that huge contract. You're expecting him to stay for at least four years, maybe even a fifth year. So honestly, I don't really know what direction the Knicks need to go in. There's so many things going on. I think if we're going to make a decision right now, it has to start upstairs. Leon Rose needs to open his mouth. He needs to give the Knicks and the fans a sense of direction in terms of where this team is going, because everything that he did in the offseason, it looked like it addressed what needed to be addressed. He came in, he brought in Evan Fournier to help at the three-point shooting, because that was non-existent last year. Probably one of the reasons why they didn't even compete against the Hawks, and that hasn't really worked out. He brought back Alec Burks, who hasn't been bad, but he's another one of those guys that were looking to trade. They didn't, and Tom Thibodeau is still putting him in with consistent minutes in this certain type of rotation. Brings in Kemba Walker. That was a complete fail. He's not even going to play for the rest of the year. So we just need a little guidance here from Leon Rose in terms of, as being a fan, in terms of where this team is headed, because it's kind of ugly. And this should have been a step forward from last year, because last year was a complete giant leap in the right direction, finishing as the 4 seed. That was unbelievable. So hopefully the Knicks end up figuring it out. But now we're going to talk about the other New York team across the way, the Brooklyn Nets. Now they're hanging on at the 8th spot in the East, and they had a big win against Charlotte on Tuesday. Another team that is in playoff contention currently, I believe it is 9th or 10th, so they are in the play-in tournament conversation. And that win was on the backs of Kyrie Irving. 50 points from Mr. Irving, a very nice performance to see. He's always fun to watch when he's actually playing. That's been an issue, as we all know, this year. So 14, 3, and 7 for Kevin Durant. And Andre Drummond, he recorded a double-double with 20 points and 14 rebounds. Now with KD back and the looser COVID restrictions in New York City, which has allowed for more of Kyrie Irving, Annabelle, how did the Nets fare down the stretch?
So I think with KD and Kyrie returning, a big thing is that it's going to give this team confidence, knowing that these two big guys are on the court with them. And I think confidence in basketball is key. Knowing you have those two guys there for you, I think that's huge. So I think the Nets, as long as Kyrie and KD can stay consistent, I think they have a shot to go pretty far in the playoffs, hopefully. I'm not saying they're going to win, but with KD and Kyrie, I think they have a shot to have a pretty good postseason.
All preseason metrics pointed to the Nets being the title favorites. If not for Kevin Durant being a size, let's say, 20 in shoes instead of a size 19, they probably win the finals last year. And I know it sounds silly, but they were extremely close last year. They did a bit of retooling, but oh no, the vaccine mandate prevents Kyrie from playing, and he refuses to get it. We're going to stay out of that argument, but we're going to say that makes James Harden upset, because James Harden came to Brooklyn thinking he'd be able to play with KD and Kyrie. Now it's just KD. And then KD gets hurt. Harden's by himself. He doesn't want to be there. He gets out of there via a trade. Kyrie still only plays road games. Granted, he just dropped 50 on 19 shots, which is unbelievably efficient. But in the playoffs, again, the vaccine and COVID restrictions have been rolled back, but the private business mandate still exists, meaning that Kyrie can sit in the Barclays Center as a fan but not play on the court. And again, we're not going to argue whether that makes sense or not, but that is just the rule in place at this time, and there has been no word on that being changed anytime soon. So due to that, we're going to operate on the assumption that they will not have Kyrie for home games in the playoffs. And James Harden said he feared a series against the Raptors because the Raptors play in Canada and they have their own COVID rules, meaning that Kyrie wouldn't be able to play a single game. And that could still be the case. Kevin Durant can shoulder the load. He can carry it. We still haven't seen Ben Simmons. We still have not seen him play. He's still reconditioning. So it's so hard to predict where the Nets will be. I think fully healthy, with no rules preventing Kyrie from playing, yes, I think they can probably win a championship. But we have to see how Ben Simmons meshes with Kyrie Irving and KD. I think Seth Curry has been a great addition to the three-point shooting, especially with Joe Harris undergoing season-ending ankle surgery. So it's good to have some shooting back. Andre Drummond, a force inside, but it's hard. I think if you're a Nets fan, watching Jarrett Allen thrive on the Cavs as an all-star this year, knowing that you gave that up and now you have nothing, basically. It's just it must be just super frustrating. But I think if you're a New York basketball fan, you should definitely focus more on the Nets at this point in terms of playoffs. And by New York, I don't mean if you're a Knicks fan, but I think if you live in the New York area and you're a basketball fan, the Nets are probably the team that can make a run in the postseason. But I don't know, the Bulls are really good. I know they've been shaky against the top of the league, but how about the Bucks, the defending champs? I mean, who's really going to stop Giannis? And if not Giannis, Chris Middleton or a Brook Lopez corner three, because that shot goes in every time. So I think the Nets are super unpredictable.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. There's just too much disorganization with the Nets right now. I mean, this team was thriving. They were the number 1 seed for a good portion of the season, and they have completely plummeted. Just too many things, too many outside elements just affecting this team in any shape or form. As you alluded to, Bridge, James Harden, he was clearly not happy there. Even he was getting most of the minutes. He was getting all of the minutes and all of the workload, but no help. I think the Nets were, 13-3 when all three of them played together?
Yes.
Something like that. So only 16 games with them, all three together. That's just
hard to believe.
It is hard to believe with all the hype surrounding that big three and what could have been. It's frustrating and it's aggravating because they could have been really good, but there's always something with this team that comes up. And even now with Ben Simmons coming over, there's still something there. He's reconditioning. Like, let's get it together. Let's go. You need him on the floor right now.
100%. The James Harden trio will remain one of the biggest what-ifs in NBA history because they only played 16 games together. So who knows what they would have done. And again, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if they do beat the Bucks, I know James Harden was and I'm talking about last year in the playoffs. Kyrie was hurt, James Harden was hurt, but they would have had enough time to come back, and I think that they would have beaten the Hawks in the conference finals, no problem. Trae Young would have came back to New York and probably heard the boos from the New York crowd given what had happened a couple weeks prior. And then I think the Nets go and play the Suns, and I think they beat them pretty easily. I think the Suns are a good team, but I think the Nets would probably win that in 5 or 6 games. And all three of those guys would want to stay long term.
Yep, absolutely, Bridge. Tough situation for both New York teams.
A lot of drama.
Definitely a lot of drama on both sides, but it's the Big Apple, so there's always drama. But we're going to put a bow on the Knicks and Nets talk for now. But when we come back, we'll have a discussion about the entire NBA. So stay tuned here on One on One Nightly.
Welcome back to One on One Nightly, production of WFUV Sports, going from 8:30 p.m. to 10 on the East Coast, talking all things sports. I'm Bridge Gotham, here with Will Town, Annabelle Watson, and we're back to talk some more NBA and some more specific general NBA. We just talked about the Knicks and the Nets, but guys, I'm going to start with Will here. Who are some teams that have been interesting this year, and what are some teams that are, I think, worth talking about here as we have about a month to go in the season?
I would definitely say right now, the team that has me the most interested is the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, they are absolutely surging, and I could easily see them overtake the Miami Heat as the number 1 seed coming out of the Eastern Conference. Harden and Joel Embiid, they look extremely scary. I honestly, everyone likes the big threes. The big threes are cool. Big threes are fun. But why fix something that is working so well? I'm thinking long term here. I don't think this team needs a third guy. I think they have exactly the right pieces they need in order to make a deep run and possibly even a finals run in Philadelphia. James Harden, he's averaging 24.6 points per game since joining Philly, and the Sixers are 5-0 when he starts games. That says a lot. Obviously his presence on the court is unmatched. They don't lose with him. He's teaching Joel Embiid how to do the classic step back three, and not just Joel, but the whole team. I see all these clips on Instagram and YouTube all over the place, and even Twitter. Everybody's doing the step back three in Philly, and they're not only doing it, but they're making it. They're making it look easy now. It's kind of scary to watch, but yeah, give me the Sixers. I really like them. They're intriguing me a whole lot.
Well, I think an interesting thing about the Sixers and James Harden more specifically, kind of going back to the whole Nets thing, I think this shows how upset he was with the Nets, because now he's in a place where he's happy and they're thriving. You know, you got Joel Embiid, you got James Harden, those two working together, and as you said, Will, I think they could really make a deep run. And then also DeAndre Jordan is a pretty valuable asset for them. You know, he kind of comes off the bench, plays for 10 to 15 minutes every night, and you know, he does what he has to do. He rebounds, he screens, and so I think having that guy off the bench in addition to the big two is a great recipe for success.
Yeah, no, I think you guys put it pretty well. Joel Embiid has had a huge problem throughout his career, and that's staying healthy. And this season, he's done a great job at staying healthy, and that's probably the main reason why the Sixers were even in a position to acquire James Harden. And it's funny because when you look at James Harden before he even joined the Nets, whenever James Harden's unhappy, he's so out of it and just forces his way. And I think if you're a fan of basketball, it's a little, I don't know, it's a bit of a sour taste in your mouth watching a player quit on a team until he is traded somewhere that is desirable for him. And that's happened twice in the past couple of years with James Harden. And look, he's in a great place now in Philly with the 76ers, and there's a huge game. I think it's tomorrow night where they play the Nets. Everyone was hoping Ben Simmons would be there. He will be on the bench for the game, so Sixers fans will be able to heckle him. But Kyrie will also be able to play. It's an away game, so that'll be a big test to sort of see how did the trade work for both teams in a quite literal way. But let's move over to the Western Conference. Let's talk about some teams. The Suns have such a huge lead in the conference, and they've been without Chris Paul for some time now, and even Devin Booker's been in and out of the lineup. So are the Suns the team to beat, not just in the West, but in the NBA?
Absolutely. 52 and 30 and 13. Wow. I mean, they don't lose. They've only lost 13 times. They have consistently won 7 and 8 games in a row throughout this entire year, and even more. They've had some much lengthier win streaks than just 7 and 8. They continue to trounce everybody in the Western Conference. It's just not even funny, and they don't even have Chris Paul. Devin Booker has been taking over for this team, and he's exceeding levels that I just didn't know that I didn't know he had these types of gears in him. I knew he was a very good player. He's probably one of the best shooting guards in the league, but he's just taking over as not only a shooting guard, but a point guard. He's doing all sorts of damage, and now he is coming back after being in the health and safety protocols, and he's available for the game against Miami tonight. And that that's a flag right there. They were without Devin Booker as well, and they still continued to win. That just shows how deep this team is. And another thing to point out about Devin Booker, he has very consistent stat lines. I believe the lowest amount of points that he's scored in his last 6 games was 24. And he's consistently between 25 and 30. And not for nothing, but he had a 6-steal performance against the Thunder a few weeks ago.
Not easy to do.
That's absolutely incredible. So I really do like the Suns. I think they'll probably come out of the West. And the West is not as tight as the Eastern Conference is. I would say probably 1-6, maybe 1-7 in the East it's wide open. But here in the West, it's
huge gap between 1 and 2. Even.
It's not close. Yeah.
I think the thing about the Suns is they have 2 things going for them that creates a very good basketball team, and that's the fact that they have different players stepping up when one goes down. So, Chris Paul went down, Booker went down, but they're still winning games, and I think that's very important. Also, again, specifically with Booker, the consistency. He's constantly going out there scoring 25 to 30. Always having that guy who's going to be your scorer, that's very important, and, you can't lack consistency. They're consistently winning 7 to 8 games in a row. That's a recipe for a very successful basketball team because you also have these different guys stepping up when things like COVID happen. We're in an unpredictable world, but with the Suns, you're going to have those guys to step up.
Yeah, I think if you're a Suns fan, you have to be extremely pleased with the way the team's playing. One of my best friends is a diehard Suns fan, and I've definitely made fun of him for years, but to be so loyal to a team, and this goes for all Suns fans who have had some really rough seasons over the past decade, and to lose a really tough finals last season after going up 2-0 and watching Giannis claim his first title, deservedly so. The Bucks were the better team, but to see the Suns come back this year, re-signing Chris Paul to a questionably lengthy and expensive contract for an aging player, but a deal that's paid off so far, and one that has put the Suns in the driver's seat in the Western Conference. So for Suns fans out there, you have to be excited.
Definitely have to be. I love the loyalty there, and you, rightfully so, could make fun of your friend there because they were pretty bad. They were not a good basketball team at all. But another team that I want to touch on here, and it's kind of an exhausted headline at this point because we've been talking about it all season long, but something big happened on Saturday, which we'll get into in just a minute. But that is the struggling and slumping Los Angeles Lakers. I mean, come on. Are they ever going to figure it out? At 28-36, currently the 9th seed, so hey, play-in. We'll see what happens there. But Westbrook, last few games, he's looking a little better, but he is not the player that they traded for. That is very evident. Frank Vogel, head coach of the Los Angeles Lakers, was interviewed and asked about benching him. He's reluctant to that despite criticism. So just a lot going on with the Lakers. And I don't know if benching Westbrook is the right move there. Like, who are you going to put in for him?
Yeah.
Who are you going to put in? He went 17-10-6 against the Spurs, which was a loss for the Lakers. But the main headline for the Lakers, and still is, even though it was half a week ago, LeBron James looking like that early Cleveland LeBron James that we remember. 56 points on the Warriors on Saturday, 56-10, and he shot a very impressive 19 for 31 from the field. As I said, that was vintage. That was a vintage performance from LeBron James. It was a fun watch. However, 2-8 in their last 10, and as I said before, they'll probably make the play-in barring a late season collapse.
Right. The Lakers are such an interesting team, and I feel like I say this for all teams. Look, LeBron James is a top 2 player of all time, where you put him, and he's averaged the most points he has since his last season in Cleveland. If I remember correctly, I think he's averaging over 29 points a game, wearing that number 6, looking like Miami LeBron James, but he doesn't have Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. He has a
washed-up Russell Westbrook
and an Anthony Davis with glass for knees. I mean, it's hard to watch, and especially as somebody, I used to love Russell Westbrook, and that's mostly because when Kevin Durant left, he was the one-man show that stayed loyal to Oklahoma City, averaged a triple-double, and won an MVP. And it's just unfortunate that his play style doesn't mesh with other players, and he's also gotten a lot older, and his shots go off the side of the backboard sometimes, but I do know some people that are diehard LeBron and Laker fans, and it's hard because they keep saying, the king will figure it out. He's LeBron James, but I mean, look at the Lakers.
He's figuring it out, but the rest of the team,
Yeah.
not really figuring it out.
Look, even if he's if you're dropping 30 points a game and you're losing, I wouldn't even call that figuring it out.
Oh yeah, as a team, definitely not.
I'm saying there's more you can do, especially you're the leader of this team. I'm not saying you should do everything, but I think you should reconsider what you're doing if your team's still not winning games. I don't care if you're filling up the stat sheet if you're getting closer to Kareem in points scored. What you need to be doing is inching your way towards the 5th title, which he's not doing this year.
For sure, and I think this shows how, even LeBron James can't carry a team on his own. The players have to mesh with him well, and, his playing style just does not really mesh well with Anthony Davis. And I think that, like I said, it's not like Miami. You don't have Chris Bosh and Chris Paul behind him. So if he doesn't have those two players behind him, he can't really carry the team on his own. And it's disappointing, of course, but it's just not a recipe for success.
No, it's definitely not. And as you said, too, Bridge, with the glass knees that Anthony Davis has, what is going on there? I don't think he was ever hurt as much as he is with the Lakers than he was with the Pelicans.
And he was hurt a little bit with the Pelicans, but it wasn't to this extent.
No, yeah, I feel like it's an extended
and he comes back
absence.
for a couple games, he's out again. I mean,
it's always the last 2 seasons, especially, have been quite the extensive amount of games missed for Anthony Davis, and it's just that they're not going anywhere.
No,
they're not going anywhere. This is not the guy that they traded for, and it's making the acquisition of Brandon Ingram look very good for the Pelicans.
Yes, long
he has
term.
Definitely been a bright spot for that franchise. But another team I want to segue into now as we continue our general NBA discussion is the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, they're an exciting team to watch. They passed the Warriors for the 2nd spot in the Western Conference. They are currently 45-22, 21-point victory over the Pelicans on Tuesday, and they're led by the electric Ja Morant, as we mentioned in the beginning of the show with Murray State talking about March Madness, and he went 24-8-8 against the Pelicans. Solid stat line, and he's done better, but still, he consistently goes out there and he plays very good basketball. He currently has 27.5 points per game for the third-year guard. And it's not just Ja, though. It's not just Ja. You got guys like Dylan Brooks. You got guys like Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson. They've all taken steps forward in terms of development, and they have really meshed well into becoming the team that they are now. It's incredible, and they have some veterans on the team like Steven Adams, who's really locking down the rebounds, a department in which they're kind of lacking in, but they still hold their own. Nevertheless, the Grizzlies are very young, and they are very good, and that just means they're probably going to be very scary for years to come.
Yeah, well, we talked about Murray State earlier. Ja Morant is a product of Murray State, and oh my gosh, I mean, every night you tune into wherever you get your sports news from, and it's another Ja Morant dunk where he's just putting a guy on a poster. It's funny, and I was one of these people I'm about to make fun of, people that were comparing top 2 picks in the 2019 draft, Zion Williamson and Ja Morant. I was a Team Zion guy initially, but oh my goodness, Ja Morant is clearly not only the better player, but the best player in that draft.
Easily.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think the Pelicans definitely regret the Zion pick now. And look, again, when Zion's healthy, he's great, but he's looking a little bigger than he should be and has struggled to get back into playing shape. So I know we're not about the Pelicans, but just to note that. I think if you're the Grizzlies, you have to be super happy. A young team means that you're going to be contending for years to come. And I still don't think – I know that Ja Morant's been all over SportsCenter or wherever you watch your highlights, but I still don't think that the Grizzlies are getting enough love. I really don't. I think it's going to take a few playoff series wins for people to realize, this team's legit. Because you're always going to think about those bigger market teams like the Golden State Warriors, for example. Steph Curry. I mean, household names that have been here for the better part of a decade.
Well, going back to a while ago with our Knicks talk, the Grizzlies are almost what the Knicks want to be. They have this young core that's meshing well, and developed together, and they're going to be a weapon for years to come. So I think, they have their one guy. They have Ja Morant, but they have the pieces around him. And I think, that's kind of what the Knicks want to be with RJ Barrett. And as I said, young teams are very fun to watch. But, Bridge, you brought this up. Small market teams, I think they always get overlooked. As you said, you're competing with the Golden State Warriors. Steph Curry, everyone knows who Steph Curry is, even if you don't watch basketball. But you kind of got to watch basketball to know who Ja Morant is. But I think if they make a deep run in the playoffs, they could get the love they deserve.
Definitely, yeah. And right now, you have to watch basketball to understand who Ja Morant is. But in years to come, it may not be the story.
Yeah.
He may end up having that title that Steph Curry has, not the 3-point shooting title that we know Curry for, but something else, because his explosiveness, that makes for very good TV, and that makes just for very good marketing.
Mm-hmm.
He's so marketable. He's very fun to watch. I pray to God that he stays healthy, because he does give me D Rose tendencies, and we all know what happened there. So before we end this segment, Annabelle is going to give Bridge and myself a few teams, and we're going to say, if just completely natural, completely raw, if this team is a contender to win the title, not just make the playoffs, but to win the title, or are they a pretender? So, Annabelle, what teams do you have for us right now?
All right, we're going to start off in the East with the Cavs.
You want me to start?
Go ahead.
The Cavs are a pretender. I love the Cavs. I love what they're doing. I love Evan Mobley, but again, this is their first year in sort of this new-look Cavs way, and I just think that a championship is might be on the horizon, but not for 2022.
I definitely got to go pretender as well. Really love what they're doing over there in Cleveland. They definitely have the recipe for success and definitely the recipe to be a top team in the East for years to come, but I have to go pretender for right now.
All right, next we're going to go with our 2021 champions, the Milwaukee Bucks.
Contender all the way
Easily.
for what you just said, the 2021 champions. They're still mostly the same team. Giannis is still absolutely that guy. I don't think there's anything else to say.
There's really not much else to say there. It speaks for itself.
Defending
Contender,
champs,
100%.
All right, next we're going pretty far north with the Toronto Raptors.
Pretender.
Yeah, they're not it.
No, they're definitely not it. They definitely like to beat the Knicks around a little bit, but they'll make the playoffs, but they don't have the pieces right now to get back to that championship caliber team that they were a few years back.
This isn't 2019. They don't have Kawhi Leonard. They don't
have Kyle Lowry.
And they're not playing a depleted Warriors team.
No.
All right, now we're going to go out west with the Warriors.
Contender
all the way. This is a culmination of what people might have thought was a dead dynasty. It was funny. I think in 2020 the Warriors were dead last in the standings, or they were pretty down low.
Second overall pick.
Yeah, and that worked out pretty well for them. But the Warriors, they have Klay Thompson back, Draymond Green's coming back, Steph Curry is still very much Steph Curry. So they still have that core that they've been running with since 2015. Of course, Steve Kerr's coaching and a lot of great new pieces. Wiggins has been great. I know he's not the number one pick, Wiggins, that people thought he was going to be, but he's a contributor. And,
Andrew Wiggins, all-star this year, and a starter nonetheless. Hey, you got to give credit where the credit is due.
Absolutely.
But yes, I have to go Warriors as a contender there. And as you said, Bridge, the dynasty is not over per se. It was just a little retool because they had a lot going on in that year. So I definitely like the Warriors. They could make some noise.
All right, next we have the Utah Jazz.
Pretender.
Yeah, pretender.
Sorry. Actually, I'm not sorry. They're definitely a pretender.
Could you see them hoisting a trophy?
Nope. No. I could see Donovan Mitchell coming to New York, but that's about it for the Jazz.
Shout out to the Utah Jazz, but they're not they're not a championship team.
No.
All right, and then last we have the Denver Nuggets.
Pretender.
Yeah.
This one I'm sorry about because I love Nikola Jokic.
He's so good.
Could go back-to-back for MVP. We'll see. But no.
He's been playing out of his mind,
too.
Yeah, but
definitely. But the Nuggets as a whole.
There's just better teams in the West.
There are. There definitely is.
Funny we agreed on every single one of
Pretty
these.
much. It's accurate, though.
Yes.
So this is going to wrap up our NBA discussion. A quick shout-out before we go to break. WFUV's own Jack Roach. he commented in our comment section, and he says that his Boston Celtics are coming out of the East. Jack, I love the enthusiasm. I know that you're going to ride the hot hand there, but I'll hit you with the we'll wait and see, pal. We'll wait and see. But yeah, the Celtics definitely making some noise right now. They creeped up into the 5th spot after being in the play-in talks. They are now 5th in the East. So Jason Tatum, 54-point game against the Brooklyn Nets. That was fun to watch. So we will see with the Boston Celtics, but that's going to conclude the basketball talk for this show. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll unpack all the big news in the NFL over the last few days. You are listening to One on One Nightly, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. Welcome back to One on One Nightly. I'm Will Talent, alongside me, Bridge Gotham, and Annabelle Watson. And now we're going to segue into our NFL discussion in this episode. And lots to talk about in the NFL. Gotta love that. Always exciting when there's big NFL news. And this was definitely a big week in the NFL. We'll kick things off right away. Aaron Rodgers. Discount double check Aaron Rodgers. He agreed to a 4-year, $200 million contract to stay with the Green Bay Packers, and 153 of that 200 is all guaranteed. That is a lot of money, but very, very deserving of that money. Back-to-back MVP. So he decided to stay put and presumably finish his career with the Packers. So 4-time MVP, he won the award in 2020, and he won it this past season. So that $200 million, as I said, that's deserved. You get that kind of money when you put up the seasons that he has put up. This season, he completed 68.9% of his passes, throwing for 4,115 yards, 37 touchdowns, and a minuscule 4 interceptions. And this contract will make Rodgers the highest paid player in NFL history. And the Packers, they also franchise tagged Rodgers' favorite target, Davante Adams. But what I'm most concerned with is the Jordan Love situation. Bridge, I'll start with you. What do the Packers do with Jordan Love now?
You have to trade him immediately.
Immediately?
Yeah,
okay.
Well, they completely fumbled the bag, and it's not their fault because the future of Aaron Rodgers was very much in the air. He was considering retirement even this offseason. But 4 years is a long time. So if you got a young player with Jordan Love, whose value is only going to decrease as time goes on, right? He's still this highly touted at college prospect. We've seen a little bit of him. But I think you have to flip him pretty quickly. Otherwise, he's just sitting behind Rodgers, not really giving you any value. And if you know you're going to have Rodgers for the next 4 years, maybe get either some picks or get some players back for him. I mean, seriously. And in terms of the contract, I mean, I'm surprised. 4 years, $200 million.
It's a lot of money. It's a big figure.
And again,
he
was going. Like, a lot of people were saying he was going to retire, right? And now all of a sudden he's going 4 more years. I mean, that's $50 million a season.
Just shows you how much he wanted out, though.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that too. But
they caved in. The Packers caved in.
But it's funny because he's played really well in the regular season, but he couldn't score more than 10 points against the 49ers in the playoffs. He has struggled in the postseason. I know there's memes
Mightily.
about the NFC Championship game, but man, it's been more than a decade since he's won a Super Bowl. I mean, seriously, this is a lot of money. I think if you don't win a Super Bowl in the next 4 years, like this is money not well spent.
Well, I definitely think also the money and the drama that comes with Rodgers with the COVID thing. It's like Kyrie Irving, same thing. The COVID drama, I think if he does not win a Super Bowl under this contract, then it's not worth it. The drama, the money. The Packers are not as good on paper as 2021, but I think they'll still be NFC favorites. But I think it's up to Rodgers to really lock in that Super Bowl win. He won a Super Bowl 13 years ago, but after this drama and all this money, I think it's time for him to get another ring.
I definitely agree. That is a kind of move that you make when you are looking to get another ring. And bringing Devontae Adams back, that is showing that the Packers are going all in. Now, personally, I really don't know what it is to get over that conference championship hump. They didn't even make it this year, and yet they were still the number 1 seed. So we will see where the Packers go. I do agree with you. I think you have to get rid of Jordan Love, but it's kind of hard when his value isn't really determined. He doesn't have any value right now. But the value that he does have is that he was a highly touted prospect.
Right, and it's not getting any better if he's
sitting on the bench.
Exactly.
So if you want him to sit back for 6 years and then when it's time,
when he's 28, 29 years, I mean, who?
Are you really going to pick up a 5th-year option? That's an interesting situation.
Yeah.
I think that they aimed a little too low. I genuinely think they thought Rodgers was either going to retire or leave. That's why they brought Jordan Love in. Mm-hmm. But that is not the case. So he'll probably be on his way. But now we will be on our way to one of 2 trades, and this one being the bigger of the 2 that happened over the last 2 days. Now, personally, this man is my favorite football player. I absolutely love watching him play. And it was kind of sad to see him leave, but I'm happy that he got put into a situation that could ultimately get him a 2nd ring, and that is Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos. Now, a little side note, the Seahawks have officially ended the Legion of Boom era. They also released legendary linebacker, Bobby Wagner, but we're going to stick with the Russell Wilson topic because it's a lot for both sides. Now, I'll just say what Denver got, and I'll say what Seattle got. So, Denver, they got Russell Wilson. There you go. But now, Seattle, they got quarterback Drew Lock. They got tight end Noah Fant. They got defensive tackle Shelby Harris. They got 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, and a 5th-round pick. Now, that is a big haul. I personally feel that compensates for the Jamal Adams haul that has completely blown up in the Seahawks' face. They have really not been a good team since he has come over. But in terms of the Broncos, this instantly puts themselves as one of the better teams in the AFC. They may still be behind the Chiefs, but I don't know. The Chiefs' defense is kind of questionable. We'll really see where the Chiefs go there. I really, really think that this makes the Broncos a threat, not only in the AFC West, but in the AFC as a whole. So, guys, it looks like a Peyton Manning-esque move. So, Annabelle, we'll start with you. Where do the Broncos stack up in the AFC now that they have their quarterback situation locked down?
I think now the Broncos will definitely compete. I think they could be the AFC champions if you get past the Kansas City Chiefs. The Broncos have a great defense, and now they have their guy. They have Russell Wilson. So I think with those 2 things, they definitely could compete, but you got to get past Pat Mahomes. And I think they can. The Chiefs' defense does tend to struggle, so I say they'll definitely be in the AFC Championship. I predict Kansas City Chiefs, Denver Broncos AFC Championship.
I don't know how to feel about this. I remember when the Legion of Boom, it's hard to believe it's been so long, but when they were at their peak, oh my goodness, the Seahawks were good. And it's just, I can't imagine Russell Wilson in a jersey that's not a Seahawks. Like, it's just,
it's so
especially
weird.
A color like orange that contrasts so much with that navy blue we're used to seeing him in. It's something you feel like you'd only see in a video game.
It's a Peyton Manning move, though.
But it's a Peyton Manning move, exactly. And I think it's funny, people are saying, oh, this team won the trade. No, I think both teams got exactly what they wanted. The Seahawks got a haul of younger players and a lot of picks to rebuild. And the Broncos, well, they got a Super Bowl MVP quarterback, right? He was Super Bowl MVP in 20.
Russell Wilson?
Was he Super Bowl
Was
MVP?
he the Super Bowl MVP? We're gonna have to
We
fact
might have to
check
fact
that
check
one.
that.
Might have to fact
Super Bowl
check that
Super
one.
Bowl champion Russell Wilson.
Yeah.
Funny enough, against the Broncos, dismantled them 43-8.
Right here
in New York City. The only time we're probably ever gonna have a Super Bowl here, and it was not a great game. But Russell Wilson dominated, and so did the Seahawks offense. But yes, Russell Wilson is a competent NFL starting quarterback who will bring a lot to the table for the Broncos and instantly moves them from a pretender to a contender, to stay on that topic from earlier.
Absolutely. Now, to answer your question, it was Malcolm Smith, linebacker for the Seahawks, who was the
Wow.
Super Bowl MVP. But
It's just
Russell-
people forget about that. I don't know.
yeah, people do forget about it. It was a long time ago, though.
Sorry,
Rich.
Malcolm, if you're
It
watching.
was
I
a
apologize.
long time ago. So, nevertheless, I think this does hopefully get Russell a second ring that he should already have.
For sure.
You know, I mean, when
Malcolm Butler.
we don't need to. We don't really need to get into that. We all know the story.
Yes.
But we're gonna segue into our next trade that happened actually a few hours ago.
Yep.
And that was Carson Wentz off to the Washington, wait for it, Commanders. There you go. I'm going to have to get used to saying that one now. Wentz is off to his third team in 3 years, and the Commanders acquired him for a package including 2 third-round picks. Now, I haven't seen the entire package. Really don't know if there's going to be any players involved with that. I think it might just be a player for picks kind of swap. Now, he had a solid year
Player
with
for
the Colts.
picks. I like the way you said that, because Carson Wentz is a player for picks.
That's there you go. But this year, though, Bridge, here you go. 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. It's a little better than past Carson Wentz. Maybe not what we were accustomed to seeing before he blew his knee out, but still pretty solid year. However, the late collapse of the Indianapolis Colts, I'm going to put that on the shoulders of Carson Wentz. He did not step up to play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. In Week 18 there, that was pretty brutal to watch, because the Colts were definitely a team that everyone was riding with Jonathan Taylor, Michael Pittman, Carson Wentz as well. They were fun.
They had Hard Knocks in there as well, mid-season edition.
Yes, they did. And now honestly, I really don't know if Wentz is the answer for the Commanders. I personally like Taylor Heineke. He does a great job over there. He may be slightly worse than Carson Wentz, but I'll ask you first, Bridge. Does this move improve the Commanders, or is Wentz not really the answer here?
I don't think he's the answer. You bring him back to the NFC East, a division he's familiar with, a division that he dominated in 2017 before injuring himself. Nick Foles, we know how that goes. So you bring him back with some familiar teams, but again, it's weird to say the Commanders. I don't know. We had football team for 2 years, and they've had their fair share of interesting names over there. But if you are a Commanders fan, I don't know how you feel, because if just imagine that we're talking about each of our favorite teams, whatever team that may be, and if I told you that you just acquired Carson Wentz, I don't think we'd be very happy. At least personally, I don't think that would be. I don't think I'd jump for joy. I think he's a middle of the pack, below average quarterback who is good, but it just doesn't. I mean, it's not. It's like, okay, you have Carson Wentz, good for you, but does that change you? I like Taylor Heineke a lot. I think the way he played against the Bucs in the wild card game in 2020 was great. I think he showed some promise, and he's played there. What was his whole career's been there, right? I mean, I think
I believe so. Yeah.
I only remember him playing there. So if you have call it a homegrown guy who's basically been a career Commander, I think you'd rather have a guy like that than bring in someone like Carson Wentz, personally.
Well, I think that Commanders fans, they can be optimistic because he is back in a conference he knows so well. I think if he was in a totally different conference, it would be another thing, but he probably has those flashbacks of just absolutely dominating teams. So I think that is something that allows Commanders fans to be optimistic, but Wentz has so much to prove after he basically went from the top to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
So he's obviously got to work his way back up. Who knows if he will ever work his way back up to the way he was in 2017. But I think being back in the AFC East is a good thing.
I'd have to agree there. But like I said, I don't really know if Carson Wentz is going to be the answer for the Commanders. So we're running out of time here for our NFL segment. We'll just bring up the quick headline. Calvin Ridley suspended for the 2022 season on a gambling incident. Now, that's big news. We're not going to have that much time to talk about it, though. But yes, wide receiver Calvin Ridley suspended for the entire 2022 NFL season. So we're going to take a short break now, but when we come back, it's time for the home stretch, or the 7th inning stretch, as Annabelle Bridge and myself will wrap up this show with some MLB CBA talk. So stay tuned. Welcome back to One-on-One Nightly here with Bridge Gotham and Annabelle Watson. I'm Will Talent, and we are in, as I said before we went to break, the home stretch, or the 7th inning stretch, as we will get into our MLB discussion for this episode. So earlier today, about a few hours ago, probably a little after the Carson Wentz trade, news broke out, and the MLB is now canceling games until April 14th. That's just horrendous. I'll start with that. And talks were hopeful last night as the two sides, they negotiated for over 17 hours, but yet still no deal. I don't understand that. You're going to pump up all of this, 17 hours of discussions, they're making progress, and then you come to today and they still have nothing. So the main things hanging up the progress here are the competitive balance threshold, minimum salary, the pre-arbitration bonus pool, and the international player draft, which was probably the main thing. The owners proposed 3 different possibilities with the international player draft, and the MLBPA promptly rejected all 3 proposals. Now, however, both the league and the union, they were able to agree on at least 2 things, 2 of those things being rule changes, and one of those rule changes is banning the shift. The other increasing the size of the base. But let's dive in a little deeper now, guys, about banning the shift. We'll start with you, Annabelle. What are your thoughts about the MLB completely wiping out the shift?
So the thing about the shift for me is if you're a hardcore baseball fan like ourselves, you appreciate the shift. You like the strategy of it, the defense. But if you're just a casual sports fan, you probably don't like the shift because there's no big home, there's less offense. And I think the thing about baseball is it's almost dying a little bit. Little kids would rather pretend to be LeBron James than Mike Trout. So I think this could be good for the bigger sports market because it could make the game more offensive based, which is a little bit more exciting to your casual sports fan. However, as someone who loves baseball and loves the strategy of baseball, I do find it a little bit disappointing that you're taking away those sneaky shifts. But for the outlook of baseball and for the betterment of baseball, I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I think you put it really well there. I think in terms of ratings and the way that people in the sport itself, you could argue that it peaked during the steroid era because of the home runs being hit. But they were breaking the rules, and you're not allowed to take steroids. You can't do PEDs. That is what it is. But the fact of the matter is that home runs and big hits and a lot of offense is what fans love, and it's what drives ratings. And the shift it's baseball strategy 101. It's, playing against lefties, playing against righties. It's using your brain, which is, baseball is a lot of mental, which is great. But unfortunately, that leads to a lot of ground outs. It leads to a lot of just lack of offense. And, well, for people like us, like Annabelle just said, we appreciate defenses reading opposing offenses, saying, this guy's a lefty, we'll go over here, we'll do this and that, and being able to counter a player's strength. But unfortunately, it leads to a lot of outs and less offense, and clearly the league wants to change that so the game could go be a bit more exciting.
Yeah, I think it will definitely overall, it'll positively affect the league in terms of marketability down the stretch. But I have to be quite frank, I absolutely despise this rule change. I really do. You guys brought it up. There is some type of strategy with the shift that is now completely wiped off of the face of the earth and will not exist in baseball. And we were talking about this pre-production. Baseball is a thinking man's game. So thinking, you have to think about, okay, there's a shift on me. If I'm Joey Gallo, I have the entire left side of the infield open to me. Let me get the ball a little deeper in the zone and try to squeeze one down the third base line. Or maybe do the boring thing, as people would say, maybe bunt. But if he bunts and he gets it down and he hits it to where nobody is, now he's on base. Now that provides a little excitement because now there could be some kind of rally. There is a loss of art when you ban the shift. You are now teaching the younger generation who you are trying to market to how to not properly play baseball. If you want to know how to hit, you have to be able to go to all fields. You can't now kids, lefties or righties, they'll just be able to think, okay, I'm going to stand here, I'm going to swing as hard as I can and hit the ball as hard as I possibly can, which is a good thing. You want to do that in baseball. But you don't have to think. You just have to do.
Yeah.
Baseball is all about thinking. It's about reaction. But now it's lost. This art is lost. Getting outs are now that much harder. I'm all for promotion of offense, but why can't we just stick to the way that we were doing it in 2019 by juicing the baseballs and keeping the rules the same? Because there was nothing wrong there. There was really nothing wrong there. We all saw the increase in production offensively with the juice baseballs. That worked fine. Why do we have to touch it more? There's no need to do that. And to reach the younger generation, which was kind of talking, may touch a little bit on what you were saying, Annabelle. Well, it'll be my opinion to what you said before. If you want to get people to believe that when they're imitating an athlete, them being Mike Trout instead of LeBron James, play games.
Yeah.
Play the game. You played 60 games in 2020. You were barely allowed to have people in the stadium for the first 2 months of 2021. And now you're taking a very nice long time, extended amount of time to figure out this new deal, and you have now canceled 2 weeks worth of games. You're doing yourself a complete disservice to getting yourself more people to play your game because you don't play your game.
Exactly. And, I think we can all come on here and throw as many shots as we want to at Rob Manfred, but I think both sides, they need to come to an agreement because it's hurting both sides and it's hurting the fans. And, it's just honestly a really frustrating situation for a baseball fan because they're not playing games. And, this happened in 2020 where they only played 62 games, and it's like every year there's some kind of exception to the MLB season, and I hope that they can come to some kind of an agreement soon because it's hurting the fans, it's hurting the market, it hurts everyone in the end.
Yeah, I just want them to get the show on the road.
Get it going. Yeah.
I know baseball is a long season, 162 games, but I think another thing, and I know we're supposed to wrap up soon, but there were talks about expanding the playoffs, which I think is a terrible idea because I think you play 162 games for a reason, which is to identify which teams deserve to be in the field and which aren't. I already think the wild card game is pushing it. I like it. I think the whole one game playoff is exciting, but going further beyond that, I think is just it's too much. You play an extremely long season. The division winners go. You get wild card game. That's the fourth team in, and you play your Division Series, Championship Series, World Series. I just think expanding the playoffs further is a bad idea.
See, I disagree, but I agree to an extent because I like the 10-team format. I think it's fine the way it is, but bringing in 12, I could live with 12. 14, you're pushing it, but 12.
12 is a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
12,
seriously,
12 is a lot, but
that's a third of the teams make the playoffs.
It is.
Are there any?
It's
Why
a
should I
lot.
watch baseball in May?
No,
why?
That's a very
right.
fair point.
It's a very fair point, but
No.
what I'm saying is that this is obviously a very money-driven situation.
Yeah.
You
Right,
will
more
bring
playoff
in
games bring in more revenue,
more
and that
more
helps the
TV
league
ratings.
overall. So I understand where you're
That
coming
makes
from.
sense, but in terms of the game itself, pushing it to 14, which has been in the talks in these recent CBA discussions, not a good idea. I'm sorry. It's just not a good idea. You're almost at 50% of the league at that
Terrible.
point.
Yeah.
We've seen the
12 is
NFL too. They
fine.
pushed it to 7,
They
and
did.
those first round playoff games were blowouts. A lot of them.
Yeah, they were. The playoffs were,
Buccaneers, Eagles. Oh my gosh.
that was terrible.
Right?
That just showed why
Why those teams weren't there in the
why they
past
shouldn't have
years.
been there in the first place.
Yep.
So before we go, I just want to touch on the rule that they have now made. It's not really a rule. It's kind of a dimension change. I don't really even know what to call it. But they are increasing the size of each base, first, second, and third. And I don't know the exact dimensions on these bases, but in my eyes, that is actually not a bad thing because it will promote more stolen bases, which is a thing that Major League Baseball desperately needs to bring back. If you want to bring back excitement into the game, you have a guy on first and he's still second base. Look at that. He's already in scoring position, and there's an opportunity for the viewers and the people in the stadium to be excited.
Yeah, I like it. Makes the game a little bit more safer too.
It does.
I
It
don't know when
does
we all
prevent
played
some
little
injuries.
league ball, we'd see the first base where there was the orange base and the one you run
Exactly,
through.
yeah.
Look, I mean, it was there for a reason as kids, but I think in the major leagues you get a little bit bigger, just less injuries, promotes stealing bases too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think, again, this could be a hardcore baseball fan thing, but I like small ball, and I think bigger bags promotes more stealing, a lot of small ball, more strategy. But the thing about stealing bases, it's also very exciting. It's not boring to watch, but it's strategy. So I think this is a good move and definitely one good thing coming out of the MLB right now.
Absolutely. So one last thing before we wrap our show today. I'm going to ask you guys, and you just give me a date. I'll start first. Season start prediction. I'm going May 1st.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't know what I was gonna say, but it was gonna be after April. I'll say May 1st, at worst maybe Memorial Day, but that's like the end of the month.
Oh my gosh,
I know it sounds awful, but let's hope for May 1st. They can get it figured out.
I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic. I think I'll say April 30th. So
like
only
that.
a few days off, but
I like that.
we're
We're
not
still in
reaching
April.
into May.
We're going to get some April baseball. So
Let's hope.
great talk here, guys. It's always a lot of fun. The MLB and the PA, they really need to figure this thing out. They're losing fans day by day, and some of those fans, they won't come back. So lots more still developing here or there. But that's going to do it for us here on One-on-One Nightly. The sports director of WFUV Sports is Bobby Chaffardini. Our radio producer, Ralph Barberi, right? There it is. Barberi. And the great Kayla Wenzel, our video producer. And for Bridge Gotham and Annabelle Watson, I'm Will Talent, and we thank you all for tuning in. Have a great rest of your Wednesday, and have an even better Thursday.